There is a specific kind of funny that only happens when someone who has spent an enormous amount of their life becoming very impressive at a very difficult thing walks into a room where none of that matters and discovers, in real time, in front of everyone, that the particular intelligence they have spent 20 years building does not help at all with the specific challenge in front of them. It is one of the great equalizers available to the universe. It does not discriminate by income or credential or the prestige of the institution that handed you your degree. It just waits, patiently, for the exact moment you are most confident, and then it arranges for the simplest possible question to be the one you cannot answer. This is a story about that moment. About a man who graduated from Harvard Medical School, completed a residency at Johns Hopkins, spent 15 years as a cardiologist, and who stood in a Family Feud studio on a Wednesday afternoon and could not produce the answer to a question that the show's producers later confirmed had a 97% correct response rate among the general American public. About what Steve Harvey did with that information. And about why the resulting clip was watched 40 million times in the first 3 days and is still being sent from person to person with the single message. You have to see this. If you need to laugh today, and honestly, when is it not a good time for this specific kind of laugh, you are in exactly the right place. Like this video and subscribe before we go any further, because joy is the whole point and we serve it every single week. Now let us talk about Dr. Gregory Ellison and the question that broke him. Dr. Gregory Ellison was 51 years old when he appeared on Family Feud in the fall of 2024, and he was, by any objective measure, a remarkable human being. He had grown up in Chicago, the son of a high school science teacher father and a librarian mother, in a household where intellectual rigor was not a performance but a daily expectation. The same way dinner was a daily expectation, and honesty was a daily expectation. He had been the kind of student that teachers remember and refer to in later years as the one who made them feel like their profession was worth it. He had attended Northwestern on a full scholarship, graduated summa cum laude in biochemistry, gone straight to Harvard Medical School where he had distinguished himself in a cohort that was, by definition, composed entirely of people who had distinguished themselves everywhere they had ever been, and had done his residency at Johns Hopkins before joining a cardiology practice in Atlanta that served a patient population that included some of the most complex cardiac cases in the Southeast. He had published 47 peer-reviewed papers. He had patents on 2 diagnostic tools. He had 3 years earlier received an award at a national cardiology conference that was the professional equivalent of a standing ovation from everyone whose opinion he had ever valued. He was also, his family would tell you cheerfully, and without any diminishment of the above, the person in any non-medical situation who you wanted least on your team. Not because he was not smart, he was extraordinarily smart, but because the specific kind of intelligence that had been trained and sharpened over 25 years of medical education and practice was a very particular instrument, exquisitely suited for a very particular set of tasks, and those tasks did not significantly overlap with what was required when you were at a pub quiz or playing a board game or, as it would turn out, standing in front of a Family Feud buzzer. He knew everything that mattered in a hospital. He knew very little that mattered at a kitchen table on game night. His family had been roasting him about this for years in the way that families roast each other about things that are both true and affectionate, and he received it with the specific self-aware humor of a man who knows his own weaknesses and has decided that knowing them is basically the same as not having them. The Family Feud team had been organized by his wife of 23 years, Dr. Naomi Ellison, who was herself a pediatrician and who was, by every measurable standard, significantly better at things that did not involve medicine than Gregory was. She had put the team together with what she described to her mother as a combination of genuine excitement and strategic concern about what Gregory was going to do when he got to the buzzer. She had warned him. She had said, specifically and on multiple occasions in the weeks before the taping, that Family Feud was not a test of technical knowledge, but of common knowledge, of knowing what most ordinary Americans would say when asked an ordinary question. She had said that his greatest professional strength, which was his comprehensive and specialized expertise in a narrow domain, would in this context be essentially useless. Gregory had nodded along to all of this and agreed with it in the way that people agree with things they understand intellectually but have not yet processed emotionally. His brother Marcus, 47, a high school basketball coach, had put it more directly. "Greg," he had said, You are going to get up to that buzzer and overthink yourself into the wrong answer, and I am going to watch it happen, and I am not going to be able to help you. Gregory had said that he would be fine. Marcus had said that he looked forward to seeing that. Their daughter Amara, 22, was in her senior year of college studying biology, clearly taking after her parents in the broadest sense, while also demonstrating, in the practice sessions, that she had inherited her mother's social intelligence alongside her father's scientific bent. Their son Tyler, 19, was in his first year at Morehouse and had his uncle Marcus's ease and his mother's humor, and had been, of everyone on the team, the most immediately and naturally good at the practice rounds, giving answers with the loose, instinctive confidence of someone who has not yet developed the habit of talking himself out of his first idea. Gregory had watched Tyler perform in practice with the expression of a man watching someone do something he cannot quite understand. They practiced for 3 weeks. Gregory was, as advertised, not good at it. He gave answers that were technically accurate in a scientific or medical sense, but that bore essentially no relationship to what 100 surveyed Americans would say. When asked to name something you do first thing in the morning, he said check heart rate variability. When asked to name a reason someone might call in sick to work, he began a sentence about the differential diagnosis of upper respiratory presentation. When asked to name something you find at a wedding, he said catering staff, which was not wrong but was also not on the survey. Naomi watched all of this with the warm, helpless expression of someone whose concerns have been confirmed, and who loves the person who has confirmed them too much to feel anything but fondness about it. Marcus watched it with the expression of a man who is already composing the speech he is going to give at every family gathering for the next decade. Tyler watched it with the expression of someone trying very hard not to laugh in a way that his father would misinterpret. They arrived at the studio on a Wednesday in October. The production crew, in the pre-game meeting, did the standard preparation and warm-up. When Steve Harvey came out and did the pre-game segment with the Ellison family, he immediately locked onto Gregory with the instinct of a man who has been doing this for a very long time and can tell within 90 seconds who the comedic center of any family is. He asked Gregory about himself. Gregory described his career with the precise, compressed efficiency of someone who has been asked to explain what he does at parties for 25 years and has developed a version that is informative but concise. He said cardiologist, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Atlanta practice. Steve Harvey looked at him with the broad appreciation of a man encountering genuinely impressive credentials. Then he asked Gregory what he was hoping to contribute to the team today. Gregory said he was hoping to be the strategic mind. Naomi, standing beside him, made no sound and no visible expression change. Marcus, standing 2 people down, looked at the ceiling. Tyler looked at the floor. Steve Harvey looked at Gregory with the expression of a man who has just been given exactly the kind of material he was hoping for and who is going to take very good care of it. The strategic mind, Steve repeated, with the specific weight of someone putting a phrase in a frame. I think I can help with pattern recognition, Gregory said. Survey questions tend to follow certain statistical distributions. If you understand the underlying population's likely responses to a given prompt. Steve Harvey looked at the audience. The audience started laughing before he said anything, because the audience was 200 people who had been watching Family Feud for long enough to know exactly where this was going. Dr. Ellison, Steve said with the elaborate respect of a man who is about to do something very specific with a very impressive title, I want you to know that I have tremendous respect for your work. 25 years Harvard, Johns Hopkins, that is extraordinary, I mean that sincerely. He paused for precisely the right beat. But I need you to understand something about this game. The survey did not go to Harvard. The audience made the sound that audiences make when something has landed perfectly. Gregory received it with the self-aware smile of a man who has been warned and who is beginning to understand, in a new and more physical way, what the warning meant. The first round went reasonably well for the Ellison family. Naomi was excellent, quick, socially calibrated, giving answers that landed with the frequency of someone who has spent 23 years managing a busy pediatric practice, and therefore has a comprehensive model of what human beings across a wide range of backgrounds tend to want and think and say. Amara was good. Tyler was, as in practice, naturally and effortlessly strong at this. Marcus was the kind of dependable that comes from 20 years of coaching. He did not give flashy answers. He gave correct ones, consistently and without drama. Gregory contributed to the early rounds without disaster, operating primarily in the lane his wife had coached him toward. Give the first thing that comes to mind. Do not deliberate. Do not apply clinical reasoning to a survey question. He had 3 hits in the first round. He was genuinely pleased. He looked at Marcus with the expression of a man who believed he had proven something. Marcus looked at him with the expression of a man who was going to give it a little more time. The second round continued. The opposing family, the Rivera family from Miami, fast and funny and clearly excellent, kept the score close. The audience was having a good time. Steve Harvey was in excellent form, bouncing between the two families with the easy warmth of a host who knows this is going well. And then came the third round and the question and the moment. It was a face-off question. The category was things associated with a typical American morning routine. Standard, universal. The kind of prompt that asks a person to produce the single most common, most ordinary, most widely shared experience of everyday American life. Steve Harvey looked at Gregory, who had stepped up to the buzzer. He looked at the Rivera family's representative, a sharp 26-year-old named Sophia, who was standing at the opposite buzzer with the focused, ready expression of someone who knows they are probably going to win this face-off. "Name something most Americans do within the first 10 minutes of waking up," Steve said. Both contestants reached for the buzzer. Gregory hit it first. There was 1 second of anticipation, 1 second in which every person in that studio was leaning slightly forward. Then Gregory Ellison, Harvard Medical School graduate, Johns Hopkins residency, 15 years of cardiology, 47 peer-reviewed papers. Gregory Ellison opened his mouth and said with complete conviction, "Check their blood pressure." The silence that followed was approximately 2 seconds long. 2 seconds is a very short time and also, in the right context, an eternity. In those 2 seconds, Steve Harvey's face cycled through several distinct expressions. Confusion, recognition, processing, dawning comprehension. The very specific joy of someone encountering exactly the thing they were warned was coming and finding that the reality exceeds all expectation. Then he made a sound that was not a word in any language, turned away from Gregory, took 3 steps toward stage left, stopped, turned back and looked at Gregory with the helpless, full-body, infrastructure-threatening laugh of a man who has completely, irrevocably, joyfully lost the battle. Naomi covered her face. Not with embarrassment, she had prepared herself for this moment over 3 weeks of practice sessions and had done her grieving in advance. With the specific gesture of someone who knew it was coming and is now simply inside the confirmation. Marcus put both hands in the air in a gesture that was either celebration or surrender and was possibly both. Tyler had both hands over his mouth and was making sounds that suggested the laughter had gone somewhere that required physical containment. Amara, to her credit, attempted to maintain composure for approximately 4 seconds before it became clear that composure was not available to her in this moment. Steve Harvey, who had turned away from the camera and put his hand on a podium for support, eventually, and it took some time, located enough of himself to face forward again. He looked at Gregory. Gregory looked back at him with the expression of a man who is in the process of updating several assumptions he had made about how this afternoon was going to go. He had not yet fully understood what he had done. He understood it was not right. He was still locating which layer of wrong it was. "Check their blood pressure," Steve repeated, not as a question, as a man reading back something he needs to hear again to believe. "It seemed like a health-conscious answer," Gregory said. Steve Harvey pointed at Gregory with the finger of a man making a precise and important point. "You know what? It is a health-conscious answer," he said. "It is a great answer for a different question. It is a great answer for what should people do in the morning. It is a perfect medical recommendation." He paused. "But I want to ask you something, doctor. With your hand on your heart, your professionally assessed heart, how many people do you think woke up this morning and went immediately to their blood pressure monitor?" Gregory considered this for a moment with the expression of a man recalibrating. "A statistically significant portion of the hypertensive population." "Brother," Steve said. "I may have miscalibrated," Gregory said. "You did," Steve confirmed. "You absolutely did." The number on the survey board, when it was revealed, showed that the correct number 1 answer was check their phone, with 74 responses out of 100. Check blood pressure was not on the board at any position. Sophia, on the other side, had given check phone before Gregory had finished his answer, which had given the Rivera family control of the round by default. Steve Harvey crossed to Sophia and said, "I want to thank you for being here today because without you, nobody in this building would know what a right answer looks like." Sophia said, "I just woke up this morning and checked my phone." Steve Harvey said, "Exactly, like a normal person." The audience had not fully recovered from the initial response, and this sent them back into it. Gregory stood at his podium with the expression of a man who's beginning to understand that this moment is going to be a story that gets told at every family gathering, every holiday, every future moment when anyone in his family feels the need to illustrate a point about him, forever. He had this understanding gradually and visibly, and the process of him having it was itself a substantial source of entertainment for the room. What followed for the rest of the game was the specific, joyful chaos of a family that had a story developing in real time and was playing both the game and the story simultaneously. Steve Harvey returned to Gregory at every available opportunity with the focused delight of a man who has found a comedic vein and has no intention of leaving it before it is fully explored. When Gregory buzzed in for the next face-off and gave a correct answer, Steve made a production of it that lasted 40 seconds, congratulating him with the specific, exaggerated enthusiasm that communicates, through its very exaggeration, that the bar for what is being celebrated has been dramatically recalibrated. When Gregory gave a second correct answer, Steve turned to the audience and said that the patient outcomes at Gregory's cardiology practice had just become the thing he most wanted to know more about. Gregory, to his considerable credit, received all of it with the grace of a genuinely self-aware person. He laughed at himself. He acknowledged the check their blood pressure answer with the clear-eyed honesty of someone who has reviewed the evidence and found it conclusive. He made a joke at his own expense that landed well enough that Steve Harvey stopped in the middle of a transition and said with genuine warmth, "See, now you're doing it." And then he made another joke and Steve said, "Okay, you can't do that, I'm the funny one here." And Gregory said, "I'm a cardiologist, I know what too much stress does to the heart." And Steve Harvey pointed at him again and said, "There it is, there is the sense of humor I was looking for." The audience loved every second of it. The Ellison family won the main game, not with Gregory as the strategic mind, but with Naomi as the strategic mind and Tyler as the instinctive mind and Gregory as what Steve Harvey generously described as the team's inspirational figure, the person whose presence gave everyone else something to rally around and whose role was motivational rather than operational. Gregory accepted this framing without objection, which was either wisdom or exhaustion or both. They went to fast money. Naomi went first, and she was exceptional, 138 points. 5 answers that hit cleanly and fast and confirmed what the previous 2 rounds had already established, which was that Naomi Ellison was very good at this and had been wasted in practice sessions trying to train her husband when she could have simply been practicing. Tyler went second, and he played with the same loose, instinctive confidence he had shown all day, 5 more answers that hit in the top spots, including 2 number ones. The family total was 312 points. The Ellisons had won $20,000. When the total went up, Gregory's reaction was the specific physical reaction of a man who did not quite believe it was going to happen after the blood pressure answer, and who was discovering that it happened anyway, which produced an expression of such unfiltered, helpless delight that the audience responded to it the way audiences respond to things that are purely joyful and unperformed. Steve Harvey shook his hand and said, "You know what you contributed to this win?" Gregory said, "The check." Steve Harvey laughed. "No, you contributed the example. You showed your family what not to do and they did everything else. That is leadership." Gregory looked at him for a moment and said, "I'm putting that in my bio." Steve Harvey said, "Please do." The episode aired 4 weeks later. Clip of the blood pressure answer from Gregory's confident button press through Steve Harvey's loss of composure through the board reveal through Gregory's measured, increasingly self-aware response was watched in the first 72 hours following the broadcast, approximately 40 million times across every platform where video can be watched. This was not, the production team noted, because anything dramatic had happened. Nobody had been wronged. Nobody had been confronted. No injustice had been addressed. A highly credentialed man had given a wrong answer on a game show, and the person hosting the game show had found it very, very funny. That was the entirety of it. And it had been shared 40 million times in 72 hours, because that is what happens when something is purely, cleanly, universally funny. When it contains not a single element that requires any shared background or political agreement or specific experience to appreciate. When it is just a person being caught by the gap between who they are in their professional context and who they are in front of a Family Feud buzzer. And when the person hosting is skilled enough to understand exactly how to hold the moment without cruelty, with warmth, with the specific fondness of someone who is laughing with a person rather than at them even when the laughter is enormous. Comedians shared it with professional admiration. Late-night shows referenced it. Morning radio ran the audio. A cardiology conference, a real one, not a joke, apparently played the clip at the opening of a keynote about the importance of maintaining perspective about the limits of specialized expertise, which Gregory later confirmed in an interview was the most unexpected professional development of his career. His colleagues at the Atlanta cardiology practice placed a blood pressure monitor on his desk with a note that said it was there in case he felt the urge to check anything first thing in the morning. He kept it on his desk. He said it was the best thing anyone had done for him all year. Naomi gave a brief interview to a podcast focused on physicians and work-life balance in which she said, very simply, that she had been trying to tell Gregory for 23 years that his brain operated excellently in one gear and needed significant external assistance in several others, and that she had found a television broadcast to be a more effective delivery mechanism for this information than 2 decades of direct personal communication. She said she did not know what that said about the nature of marriage versus the nature of mass media, but that she was choosing to regard it as a communication victory regardless of the channel. She said that Gregory had taken it beautifully, which was true and which she wanted on the record, and that he had immediately become the funniest person to himself about the whole thing, which was even more true and which she wanted on the record even more. Marcus, the basketball coach, gave no interview. He did not need to. He had already communicated everything necessary at the post-taping dinner at which he had said, at the exact moment the dessert arrived, "Check your blood pressure, Greg." He had said it in the flat, exact, unemotional tone of someone delivering medical advice. The table had not recovered for several minutes. Gregory had laughed harder than anyone. He almost always does, which is, his family will tell you, the best thing about him and has been from the beginning. Tyler, back at Morehouse, told the story at his dormitory floor's communal dinner the week the episode aired. He told it the way his mother had told stories to his father across 23 years, and the way his grandfather had told stories before that, and the way people tell stories when they have grown up in a house where language was taken seriously and humor was considered a form of love. He told it well. His dormitory floor watched the clip on someone's laptop and responded the way 40 million people had responded, and Tyler received their response with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knew the original and finds that the recording does it justice. Dr. Gregory Ellison went back to Atlanta and went back to his practice and went back to his patients. He checked 47 blood pressures in the week following the broadcast, which is a normal week's worth of blood pressures in a cardiology practice, and which he described to Naomi as the most focused and committed checking of blood pressures he had ever done, because every time he picked up a cuff he thought of Steve Harvey's face, and it made him very precise. He said that was probably a net positive for patient outcomes. Naomi agreed that it probably was. The thing about specialized brilliance is that it is genuinely brilliant and also genuinely specialized, and the gap between those two things is where most of the best comedy lives. Gregory Ellison spent 25 years becoming one of the most skilled cardiologists in the Southeast, and every hour of that work was real and valuable, and has made a difference in the lives of hundreds of patients who needed exactly what he had built himself to provide. None of that is diminished by the fact that he cannot tell you what most Americans do within 10 minutes of waking up. Those are two different things. The ability to interpret an echocardiogram and the ability to know that people check their phones first thing in the morning are separated by an enormous distance, and crossing that distance requires a completely different kind of attention than the one his training developed. The universe, in its quiet and patient way, arranged for this to become apparent to him on a Wednesday afternoon in front of a studio audience. What made it as funny as it was, what made 40 million people send it to each other in 3 days, is not the gap itself, but the specific confidence with which Gregory stepped up to the buzzer. Not arrogance. Not the arrogance of a man who thinks he is better than other people. The confidence of a man who has been right about hard things for so long that he has stopped fully updating his model of which situations are hard. He pressed the buzzer first. He had the answer ready. He said it without hesitation. He was completely, entirely certain. And he was so specifically, categorically wrong that the universe had to laugh at itself a little, and threw it at all of us, at every person who has ever been very good at a thing and walked into a different room still wearing the certainty of the first room, finding out the hard way that certainty is not transferable. Steve Harvey knew this. He had spent a career watching people walk into rooms they thought they understood and discovering something else. He had also spent a career as someone who has been underestimated in every room that judged him by anything other than what he actually was, and who has consequently developed a very precise understanding of the specific comedy available when credentials and reality perform their periodic divergence. He roasted Gregory Ellison with a thoroughness and a warmth that was exactly the right combination, enough to make it art, not enough to make it unkind. He gave Gregory a hard time and gave him the grace to receive it well, and made sure at the end to say that what Naomi and Tyler and the rest of the family had done was genuinely excellent, and that the $20,000 belonged to all of them. Gregory agreed. He said his contribution was motivational. He said it the way a man says something when he has fully made peace with the truth of it and found that the truth is funnier than any alternative version would have been. He checked his phone first thing the next morning. He has checked it every morning since. He told Naomi. Naomi said that was growth. Gregory said that was the most expensive lesson in normal behavior he had ever received. Naomi said $20,000 and counting. Gregory agreed that was a reasonable accounting of the situation. They both laughed. That is, as a general matter, still how things go in their house. 23 years in and still laughing. It turns out that is the most important vital sign of all, and no machine is required to check it. If this story made you laugh, if you sent it to someone before you finished watching, or if it made you think of the specific brilliant person in your own life who would absolutely have said check your blood pressure, share this right now. Leave a comment below and tell us who in your life would have given that answer, because this community's comments are the best part of the whole experience, and today they deserve to be full of names and stories. And if you are not already here with us, subscribe right now, because every single week we come back with stories that do what this one did, stories that make you feel something real. Whether that something is moved or inspired or laughing so hard you have to put the phone down for a second. We will see you in the next one.